Before we turn to the other business, let's talk about the impeachment inquiry itself. Is that of concern? Should it be of concern to investors, to markets?
Yeah, well, I think markets have largely ignored it so far. Of course, what I think the markets are assuming is that, yes, maybe this president gets impeached, which only takes 218 votes in the House, but very unlikely that he then gets convicted by the Senate, which takes, again, 2/3 of the Senate and for conviction and then also removal. And, of course, no president in the history of the Republic has ever been both impeached and convicted. So I think the markets are just assuming that is not going to happen. Now, if that dynamic changes, if you see more Republican senators, sort of like Senator Mitt Romney came out over the weekend, questioning sort of some of President Trump's judgment, then the markets might get more concerned. But just by itself, I think the markets are assuming that this is just a political, partisan machinations on the Hill and not something that's going to be relevant.
So let's turn to the knock-on effects potentially, because those are some things that the markets have reacted to. Things like, for example, U.S.-China trade and the USMCA, the successor to NAFTA. Is it possible for Washington to move forward on things like that? At the same time, we have this conflagration over impeachment.
Yeah, and I think, like we've discussed before, David, I think the impeachment inquiry changes the dynamics around NAFTA 2.0, the USMCA for Democrats. Speaker Pelosi, we think will be much more inclined to bring this up for a vote in order to provide some cover for those 31 Democrats out of the 235 in the House Democratic Caucus who won in districts that President Trump won in. So she, I think, realizes that she needs to provide some political cover for them. And so I think the chances of seeing actually NAFTA ratification is much higher than it was even before impeachment. Maybe it's not so necessarily intuitive, but I think that's more likely to happen now.
And some of the signals coming out of Capitol Hill tend to confirm what you're saying. The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee sort of says, we're not there yet, but we're making progress, which is encouraging.
Right. I think they're both saying sort of adamantly we're trying to get to yes. Now, so I think one of the big question marks here is whether organized labor endorses this. And they also say that they're trying to get to yes. You saw the head of the AFL-CIO go down to Mexico. So I think, everyone seems to be negotiating in good faith. If the AFL-CIO, for example, comes out against it, then it's going to be harder for Speaker Pelosi. But again, I think the political dynamics around this have changed quite a bit because of impeachment.
What about keeping the government going?
So that's something that I don't think the market is very focused on and will be if it looks like we might see another government shutdown. So, just kind of to take a step back, of course, the big, broader spending levels have already been agreed to. Now it's just sort of the underlying appropriations bills that needs to be passed. I think Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader McConnell certainly want to get those passed in time of this November 21st deadline. But the big question mark here is President Trump and whether he insists once again that you get sort of border funding for Mexico and U.S. And that's something that Speaker Pelosi has said is a non-negotiable. And in the event that he insists, we've already seen him shut down the government before earlier this year for 35 days. I think you could see him do it once again.